I'm going to share knowledge about effects of pesticides on biodiversity. As Dawn said, we know everything. But we should also be aware then that there is a toxic effect because pesticides are actually designed to be toxic. They are designed to field. So it's not so surprising that they do their job. But the problem is that besides from that, killing plants if they are weeds in the field, pests, diseases, then exactly the same kind of organisms, they are actually the targets. So therefore we have kind of problems with products. And I'd also want to mention a small thing about this using of the wording in the legislation, in the management. It's calling pesticides for plant protection product. Actually, they are not protecting plants. They are killing most of the plants to some extent, or having a kind of effect. They might be crop protection products. So that's just for a slight remark. And when we're talking about non-target organisms, definition, EFSA, which covers this situation, as you see here on the diagram. Those found outside of the field. It's called the off-field situation. They might be exposed to pesticides both by direct overspray, which only covers for a short zone next to the field, and then in the spray drift, pesticides that moves out of the field, mainly drift, but also runoff to water resources. And how much do pesticides is actually reaching non-target organisms? There's a general estimation of the fractions that reach this off-field conditions of 3 to 5% of the usage, and which holds for many different crops. But if they are used aerial application as is done for example, soybean production, the drift raises up to 20 to 60%. So quite some part of the pesticides leave the field in order to. Now it's not working again. I think it needs maybe a minute. I do. For example. Now it works. You should just stand there. When looking at this drift, we rarely monitor it. We use models to calculate the amount of drift reaching off-field conditions. And for many years, EFSA and other bodies has used this Gansenmeyer-Vautman model. And but it was realized that it underestimated the spray drift. Up to 69% of the situation gave an underestimate, and therefore they this year came up with a new model that reduced the fraction that was underestimated. Now I will go to the field, to the off-field conditions. We heard this morning from Lisbeth that insects are not doing good. And this study, I guess all of you have heard about it. It's a German study about reduction in biomass of flying insects in the natural area in Germany, in Natura 2000 sites. And these data were collected with some traps. You see them on the photos, some traps where the insects fly into, and they are trapped into a small bottle where they filled with ethanol, and then they sample the insect and count the numbers and weigh them and identify them. And what they realized was that over a close to 30 years period from the beginning of the or the end of the 1980s and up to recently, we had this dramatic decline in insect biomass. But together with that, we actually also have a similar decline in the diversity, in the biodiversity. This study has not been talked so much about, but actually it is not only a biomass decline, it's also a diversity decline. So the species numbers are declining and the abundance, as you see on this figure, are declining as well. And what's the reason for this? People began thinking of. And the main change, even though it has not been documented in these publications, the main change over these 30 years was the agricultural intensification. The area of land was more or less the same in the late 1900 and today, but the intensification of the production was really changed over that time. And therefore, a group of German researchers actually was redoing this insect sampling. They went out again and sampled, put up these tents and collected insects in the same areas, in natural areas. And what did they find? They found that there was actually 47 currently used pesticides in these ethanol bottles with the insects. Insects was not dying from that. They were able to fly into the traps and become collected, and they were carrying pesticides with them. And on average, they were carrying 16.7 pesticides into each of the samples. So there's a lot of pesticides reaching even conditions long away from the field condition in the off-field situation. Another German study showed was air sampling, passive sampling of air all over Germany in off-field conditions, including organic fields, including also nature reserves and other off-field situations. And they found more than 100 different pesticides in these samples, and also pesticides in concentrations that definitely have effects on living organisms. So these results are, of course, relevant both for biodiversity, but also for all the services relying on biodiversity. We heard...
To ask you to put it closer to your mouth.
Okay, I tried.
Thank you.
That's much better. I can... Yes, the diversity of species is important for the services that can be found in these systems. And as you said, you are using IPM technology, you are relying on biology, but you should also be relying on diversity, on the ecological interaction of the species. And yeah, the results, of course, also is relevant for organic farming that need to document that their product is free of pesticides, and that could definitely not be said. I will jump fast to a few more things. Yeah. So I just turn to some of our studies of effects of pesticides on the reproduction of some water insects that are having a terrestrial adult stage. And these insects are by far more sensitive than the honeybee, which is today measured when we are doing testing. And what we see is, like we do see on humans, that the reproductive endpoint is definitely sensitive. These species was not able to lay egg or do their mating behavior when they were exposed to sublethal concentrations of pesticides. Yes. And we also see the same kind of effects when we are looking at plants. Plant flowering, the plant reproduction is also affected by pesticides. Here, the herbicide glyphosate reduces the flowering, both the number of flowers, but also delay flowering period and shorten it. And we find the same kind of effects if we go to the field and compare organic and conventional hedgerow vegetation. We see without pesticide exposure that here is represented by organic farming, that more species flower at higher intensity and plants flower earlier and for a longer period without pesticides. So we, regardless, I just have to
2 minutes. That's
yeah,
fine.
have a few more important messages to give, because we also see indirect effect when the plant, when the flowering is reduced, then it of course affects the insects that rely on the plant flowering, the pollinators, but also many other insects. And we have seen that both the vegetation rate and the diversity of insects visiting the plants are reduced if the plant is exposed to low dosages of glyphosate. Such effects translate into food web effects, as shown on the templates to the left in the dias, and the effect, of course, is reduced as you go up in the food web. But another thing that might happen in the food web is a bioaccumulation of the pesticides as you go up in the food web. And a very recent review that have looked at effects of pesticide of arthropods, some kind of insects exposed to pesticides, have shown that there's an accumulation from the insects and up in the food chains. So we have definitely not only effects on the target organisms, which is what we are going for, but also many different effects on the non-target part of the biodiversity. So pesticides may have significant effects on non-target organisms. Both lethal and sublethal concentrations impact the organisms. Many different endpoints might be affected: species register, community composition, behavior, reproduction, and also food web effects are seen. So pesticides thereby affect ecosystem services, which we rely on if we're going for an ecological intensification, not agricultural intensification, maybe. So, and then the final thing is that we might underestimate the number of pesticides and the concentration reaching natural areas.
I want to hear if there's a single question for Beate before we move on. There's a hand down here.
Hi, I'm Laura Bemering, and I have a question regarding pesticide use on flowers, because a lot of the research focuses normally on pesticide use of crops, but I understand that also flowers, like horticulture, and then eventually also consumer use of flowers that have been treated with pesticides, are an enormous effect on our biodiversity. And I was wondering, as a researcher, do you have any further insights in the differentiation between the effect of crops versus flowers or plants?
Yes, we need to make sure that we are not mixing up these effects on flowers, because I guess you're talking about horticultural plants, because what I was talking about when I was talking about effects to flowers, it was a reduction in the flowering intensity and the flowering period and such things. And those kind of effects might be seen both on horticultural plants or on crops. And we might see the the effects long after the plants is actually exposed to the pesticides. When we're talking about horticultural plants, many of them are grown in contained conditions where many other pesticides are used than we use for the infield conditions, and many of them also have quite toxic profiles, so they are not good for the environment at all. But as they are used for the contained conditions, they might not have this spray drift situation to the surroundings. But some horticultural flowers are also grown outdoor. So from that kind of production, there will also be spray drift and effects on surroundings.